They rolled their eyes when my ADHD son moved too much at graduation, until the speaker mentioned him. I never thought that my son's ADHD, which had caused us so many problems throughout his school years, would be the reason for the most emotional moment of my life. My name is Sarah, I'm 42 years old, and I'm the mother of Marcus, a 17-year-old who has been fighting against prejudice and misunderstanding since he was diagnosed with ADHD at age 7. What happened at his high school graduation ceremony not only changed how our community saw him, but also how I understood the true meaning of neurodivergence. If you believe that our differences can be our greatest strengths, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. That sunny June morning, I was preparing for what should have been one of the happiest days of our lives, but I was actually dreading it. Marcus had always been what people called a difficult child. From the moment he could walk, he never stopped moving. In preschool, teachers would tell me he couldn't sit still for story time. In elementary school, I received daily calls about his behavior. He's disruptive, they would say. He can't focus. He's bothering other students. The worst part was that I knew they were right, but I also knew there was something more to it. The diagnosis came when Marcus was in 2nd grade. After months of evaluations, meetings with specialists, and countless sleepless nights, we finally had an answer: attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The doctor explained that Marcus's brain worked differently, that he had difficulty controlling his impulses and maintaining attention on tasks that didn't interest him. But she also mentioned something that stuck with me. Children with ADHD often have incredible creativity and unique problem-solving abilities. However, the school system didn't seem to see it that way. Throughout elementary and middle school, Marcus was constantly in trouble. He would forget assignments, lose his homework, talk out of turn, and yes, move constantly. His teachers saw this as defiance or lack of discipline. I tried to explain that he wasn't being rebellious on purpose, that his brain simply processed information differently, but I often felt like I was talking to a wall. The worst incident happened in 6th grade. Marcus was giving a presentation about the solar system, a topic he was passionate about. He knew every detail about each planet, could recite facts that amazed even adults, but during his presentation, he kept pacing back and forth, gesticulating wildly, and speaking very quickly. Mrs. Henderson, his teacher, interrupted him mid-sentence. "Marcus, stand still and speak normally. This is a classroom, not a circus," she said in front of the entire class. The other students laughed, and I watched my son's face turn red with embarrassment. He never volunteered to present again. High school wasn't much better. Despite being incredibly intelligent and having an exceptional memory for topics that interested him, Marcus struggled with the traditional teaching methods. He would hyperfocus on subjects he loved, like science and technology, but had difficulty with subjects that required sitting still and memorizing information without context. His grades were inconsistent, and many teachers labeled him as lazy or unmotivated. The social aspect was perhaps the most painful to watch. Marcus's impulsivity and hyperactivity made it difficult for him to maintain friendships. He would interrupt conversations, had difficulty reading social cues, and his constant movement made other kids uncomfortable. I watched him eat lunch alone countless times, trying to find his place in a world that seemed designed for neurotypical brains. What hurt the most were the comments from other parents. At school events, I would hear whispers, "That's Sarah's son, the one who can't behave. Why doesn't she control him better? He's so disruptive in class." Some parents even asked teachers to move their children away from Marcus, as if his ADHD was contagious. I felt judged not only as a mother but as if I had failed my son somehow. The bullying was constant. Kids would call him spaz, freak, or crazy. They would intentionally provoke him, knowing his impulsivity would make him react quickly. Then they would act innocent when he got in trouble for his response. I lost count of how many times I was called to school because Marcus had caused problems, when in reality, he was just trying to defend himself from harassment. Despite all this, Marcus had some incredible qualities that people rarely noticed. His creativity was off the charts. He could come up with solutions to problems that left adults amazed. His memory for details was phenomenal when it came to topics he was passionate about. He had an innate ability to see patterns and connections that others missed. But these talents were overshadowed by his difficulties in the traditional classroom environment. As graduation approached, I was nervous. The ceremony would be long, formal, and would require sitting still for extended periods. Marcus had made it through high school, barely, but I knew the graduation would be torture for him. I had already prepared myself for the disapproving looks, the whispered comments, and the possibility that we might have to leave early if he couldn't handle it. The morning of graduation, Marcus was more hyperactive than usual. He was excited but also anxious. He kept pacing around the house, talking rapidly about his plans for the future. I gave him his medication, but I knew it wouldn't completely eliminate his symptoms, especially under stress. I packed some fidget toys in my purse, hoping they might help him get through the ceremony. We arrived at the school auditorium, and I immediately felt the familiar knot in my stomach. Other families were already seated, the parents looking elegant and composed, the siblings sitting quietly. Marcus and I found seats in the middle section, and I prayed we could get through the ceremony without incident. As soon as we sat down, Marcus began to fidget. He was tapping his foot, adjusting his position constantly, and playing with the program. I could see other parents looking at us with those familiar expressions of disapproval. A woman in front of us turned around and gave us a look that clearly said, "Control your child." I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. The ceremony began, and Marcus tried his best to sit still, but his body seemed to have a mind of its own. He was constantly moving, shifting in his seat, tapping his fingers on his knee. The elderly gentleman next to us huffed audibly and moved slightly away from us. I placed my hand on Marcus's knee, hoping to calm him, but it only helped for a few seconds. When the principal began reading the graduates' names, Marcus became even more agitated. He knew his name was coming, and the anticipation was killing him. He started rocking slightly in his seat, and I could hear people behind us whispering, "Can't he sit still for 5 minutes? This is so disrespectful to the other families. Why did they even bring him if he can't behave?" I wanted to defend my son, to explain that he wasn't being disrespectful on purpose, that his brain simply worked differently. But I had learned over the years that explanations often fell on deaf ears. People preferred to judge rather than understand. When Marcus's name was called, he jumped up so quickly that he knocked over his water bottle. As he walked across the stage, I could see him trying to control his movements, but his excitement was palpable. He shook the principal's hand perhaps a bit too enthusiastically and practically bounced back to his seat. I heard someone behind me mutter, "Finally! Maybe now he'll calm down." After all the diplomas were distributed, the principal announced that there would be a special recognition. "Every year, we like to acknowledge students who have made significant contributions to our school community," she said. "This year, we have a particularly special recognition to make." Marcus was still fidgeting, but I noticed he had become more attentive. The principal continued, "Throughout the year, we've received numerous reports about a student who has gone above and beyond to help their classmates. This student has tutored struggling peers, has shown exceptional creativity in problem solving, and has demonstrated an incredible ability to think outside the box." I felt curious but didn't think much of it. Marcus had always been willing to help others, especially with subjects he was passionate about, but I didn't think anyone had noticed. The principal continued, "This student has also shown remarkable resilience in the face of challenges and has taught us all about the importance of embracing our differences." My heart began to race. Could she be talking about Marcus? I looked at my son, who was now completely still, his attention fully focused on the principal. The principal smiled and said, "The recipient of this year's Outstanding Student Award for Community Service and Innovation is Marcus Johnson." The auditorium fell silent. I felt like time had stopped. Marcus looked at me with wide eyes, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. The principal continued, "Marcus, would you please come to the stage?" As Marcus walked to the stage, the principal began to explain his contributions. Marcus has spent countless hours tutoring classmates in science and mathematics. His unique approach to explaining complex concepts has helped many students improve their grades. His teachers report that his ability to think creatively and see problems from different angles has been invaluable in group projects. I started crying. All those years of struggle, all those moments when I thought the world was against us, and here was public recognition of my son's worth. But the principal wasn't finished. Marcus has also been instrumental in helping the school's IT department solve several technical problems. His innovative thinking and attention to detail have been remarkable. She paused and looked directly at Marcus. But what makes this recognition even more special is that Marcus has accomplished all of this while managing ADHD. He has shown us that neurodivergence is not a limitation, but a different way of experiencing and contributing to the world. The audience was completely silent. I could feel the shift in the room, the realization that they had misjudged this young man who had been fidgeting in his seat just moments before. The principal continued, Marcus's story reminds us that every student has unique talents and perspectives to offer. His journey has not been easy, but his persistence and the support of his family have allowed him to flourish. At this point, I was sobbing openly. Marcus accepted the award with a huge smile, and for the first time in years, I saw him stand completely still, not out of forced discipline, but out of genuine pride and confidence. The principal asked him to say a few words. Marcus took the microphone, and his voice was clear and strong. I want to thank my mom, who never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I also want to say to anyone who feels different or struggles in school that your differences are not weaknesses. My ADHD makes me see the world differently, and that's actually my superpower. The audience erupted in applause, and I noticed that the same people who had been rolling their eyes at Marcus earlier were now clapping enthusiastically. The woman who had given us disapproving looks was wiping tears from her eyes. The elderly gentleman who had moved away from us was applauding vigorously. After the ceremony, something magical happened. Parents who had never spoken to us before approached us to congratulate Marcus. Mrs. Henderson, the teacher who had embarrassed him in 6th grade, came up to us with tears in her eyes. I owe you an apology, she said to Marcus. I didn't understand then what I understand now. You've taught me so much about seeing potential in every student. One father, whose son had been in Marcus's class, told me, I had no idea Marcus was helping so many kids. My son mentioned that Marcus had helped him with math, but I didn't realize the extent of his contributions. I'm ashamed that I judged him so harshly. A teacher I had never met before approached us and said, I've been working with students with ADHD for years, and Marcus's story is exactly why I'm passionate about inclusive education. He's proof that when we support neurodivergent students instead of trying to change them, incredible things can happen. The principal pulled me aside and explained that Marcus's impact had been much greater than I had realized. He's been quietly helping struggling students for years, she said. His teachers reported that his study groups were more effective than traditional tutoring because he could explain concepts in ways that resonated with different learning styles. His ADHD traits that we once saw as problems were actually his greatest assets. She continued, Marcus's hyperfocus allowed him to dive deep into subjects and understand them in ways that helped him teach others. His hyperactivity translated into enthusiasm that was contagious. His impulsivity, when channeled correctly, became spontaneous creativity that solved problems others couldn't. Over the following weeks, I learned even more about Marcus's contributions. His computer science teacher told me that Marcus had developed a program that helped students with learning difficulties organize their assignments more effectively. His biology teacher mentioned that Marcus's unique perspective had led to insights that even surprised her. His English teacher, who had initially struggled with Marcus's inability to sit still during discussions, realized that his movement actually helped him process information better, and she had started allowing other students to stand or move during class if it helped them focus. The most surprising revelation came from the school counselor, who told me that several students had come to her saying that Marcus had helped them feel less alone in their struggles. He has a way of making students feel understood and accepted, she said. His openness about his own challenges has created a safe space for others to share theirs. Marcus's graduation day became a turning point not just for him, but for our entire community. The recognition he received opened people's eyes to the fact that neurodivergence brings valuable perspectives and abilities that our society needs. It challenged the narrow definition of what it means to be a good student or a successful person. In the months following graduation, Marcus enrolled in a computer science program at a local college that specifically welcomed students with learning differences. He thrived in an environment that understood and accommodated his learning style. His professors quickly recognized his talents, and he began working on research projects that utilized his unique problem-solving abilities. The ripple effects of that graduation ceremony extended far beyond Marcus. The school district began implementing more inclusive practices, training teachers to recognize and support neurodivergent students. They created programs that allowed students to demonstrate their knowledge in ways that suited their learning styles, rather than forcing everyone into the same mold. Other parents in our community started sharing their own stories about children with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and other neurodivergent conditions. A support group was formed, and suddenly families who had felt isolated found a community of understanding and acceptance. The conversation shifted from, "What's wrong with these kids?" to, "How can we better support all types of learners?" Marcus's story also inspired other students to embrace their differences. A girl with autism who had been hiding her stimming behaviors started feeling more comfortable being herself. A boy with dyslexia who had been ashamed of his reading difficulties began to focus on his strengths in visual arts. The culture of the school began to change, becoming more inclusive and celebrating diversity rather than demanding conformity. Looking back, I realized that the journey with Marcus taught me as much as it taught him. I learned that advocacy isn't just about fighting for your child. It's about changing perceptions and creating a world where all children can thrive. I learned that neurodivergence isn't something to be fixed or cured, but something to be understood and supported. I also learned that the traits that make life challenging for neurodivergent individuals can also be their greatest gifts. Marcus's inability to sit still reflected his active, engaged mind. His difficulty following traditional instructions stemmed from his creative thinking. His hyperfocus, while sometimes problematic, allowed him to dive deep into subjects and develop expertise that benefited others. Today, Marcus is studying computer science and specializing in developing assistive technologies for people with learning differences. He's using his first-hand experience with ADHD to create solutions that help other neurodivergent individuals succeed. His professors describe him as one of their most innovative students, someone who approaches problems from angles that others wouldn't consider. The graduation ceremony that I had dreaded became the moment that changed everything. It showed our community that the student they had dismissed as disruptive was actually a valuable contributor who had been helping others all along. It challenged everyone present to reconsider their assumptions about what success looks like and what it means to be a good student. Marcus's story is a reminder that neurodivergence is not a defect to be fixed, but a different way of experiencing the world that brings unique perspectives and abilities. When we create inclusive environments that support different learning styles and ways of being, everyone benefits. The student who fidgets might be the one who sees solutions others miss. The child who can't sit still might be the one who brings energy and creativity to every situation. Most importantly, Marcus's journey taught us that behind every difficult child is a person with immense potential waiting to be recognized and nurtured. It takes patience, understanding, and a willingness to see beyond surface behaviors to appreciate the gifts that neurodivergent individuals bring to our communities. The applause that filled the auditorium that day wasn't just for Marcus. It was for all the students who learn differently, who see the world through unique lenses, and who contribute to our society in ways that aren't always immediately visible. It was a celebration of diversity, inclusion, and the recognition that our differences are not obstacles to overcome, but assets to be celebrated. That graduation ceremony transformed not just how others saw Marcus, but how Marcus saw himself. For the first time in his life, he felt truly valued and understood. The recognition gave him the confidence to pursue his dreams and use his unique abilities to make a difference in the world. And as I watched him walk across that stage, no longer trying to suppress his natural movements but walking with genuine pride and confidence, I knew that the young man who had been labeled as different was exactly who the world needed him to be.